One of these gentlemen lived for 20 years without knowing who he was or where he came from. What is your name, please?
My name is Robert Sheridan.
My name is Robert Sheridan.
My name is Robert Sheridan.
Only one of these gentlemen is the real Robert Sheridan. The other two are imposters and will try to fool this panel. Tom Poston, Peggy Cass, Orson Bean, and Kitty Carlisle on To Tell the Truth. To Tell the Truth is brought to you this evening by Easy On Spray Starch with a special formula that will not scorch, leaves your iron shining clean, free from starch buildup. Easy On. And now, here's your host, Bud Collier.
Thank you very much. Welcome once again to Tell the Truth. Good evening, panel.
Good evening, Bud.
Nice to see you all. Kitty, you pearl of great price, I want to congratulate you on the tremendous success You Can't Take It With You is having.
Thank you. It is marvelous, isn't it?
I should say so.
Funniest play in town.
I'm going tonight.
Great, are you?
Yes.
Great
I'm
notice
going
is
tonight,
got.
too.
It's a great tribute to the memory of its authors, George S. Kaufman and Kitty's husband, Moss Hart, to have that thing revived. George, it must have been good at the beginning, or it wouldn't be good right now. Open up your envelope, if you will, please, panel, and follow along with this first story. I, Robert Sheridan, was on my way to be discharged from the armed services when I met with an accident. I regained consciousness by the side of a road and had no idea where I was or who I was. My identification bracelet was defaced, and all that remained was a first name, Robert, and the letters S-H-E-R. I adopted the name Robert Sherman, and for 20 years I traveled around the United States doing all sorts of jobs and searching for my real identity. Recently, while I was driving my car to work, my nerves suddenly seemed to go to pieces. I went to a psychiatrist, and while under his care, my real name and my childhood address suddenly popped into my head. When I went to my old hometown, the house looked familiar, but I recognized none of the people living in the neighborhood. I started thumbing through the telephone book. The second Sheridan I called turned out to be my uncle. He told me that everyone except my mother and father assumed I was dead. They had never given up hope. Within a week, I was reunited with my parents for the first time in almost 20 years. Signed, Robert Sheridan. Now, panel, these three gentlemen all claim to be Robert Sheridan. We'll start the questioning, if we may, with Kitty Carlisle. Kitty?
Thank you, Bud. Number 3, what sort of an accident was it?
Well, I was hit about the head, and I had a broken nose beside the road.
Thank you. Number 2, was it under hypnosis that you discovered that this name popped into your head?
No.
It was just through going back into your childhood?
Yes.
Number 1, what is aphasia?
I don't know.
Number 3, did your parents report you to the Missing Persons Bureau?
Yes, they did.
Number 2, and you had never checked with the Missing Persons Bureau?
I checked with the FBI.
But not the Missing Persons Bureau?
No.
Number 1, did you check?
Yes.
And what did they tell you?
My fingerprints were sent in, and they came back just as we had sent them, with the name I had chosen.
Tom Poston.
I'm interested in that, too. When you checked with the FBI, did they have a record of your prints?
No.
Number 2, I'm sorry. Number 2, did they have a record of yours?
No, the same name came back that I put down on the application.
Oh, I see. Gee, that's so distressing. I, of course, couldn't remember my name for a while. When I was on, I know exactly the feeling that you have. Number 3, please, what was the reason for your breakdown, as far as you know? I mean, was it just an effort of your brain to get back its identity?
I don't know.
Number 2, what kind of analyst did you go to? Do you remember?
I went to a psychologist.
And what did he say was the reason for that breakdown?
Peggy Cass. I don't mean Peggy Cass was the reason for the breakdown.
Peggy, you...
It's happened before. Number 3, where were you reunited with your parents?
In Lawton, Oklahoma.
Thank you. And number 1, what was your original hometown?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Thank you. Number 2, how come the Army or the Navy, whatever service you were in, didn't have a record of your fingerprints?
I don't know.
Well, that's pretty lax of them. Number 3, when you didn't show up on your way to be discharged, didn't the Army list you AWOL?
They might have for a while, but after that, they did nothing about it.
Well, number one, didn't they phone your parents and say what had happened to you or anything?
Yes, they, of course, made a check on it, and I assume I was listed AWOL.
I see. Gee, number two, you were as gone as long as Rip Van Winkle.
Orson Bean.
Number two. Now, there's other stuff that isn't in here that I assume must have happened. Let me ask you this. Did you acquire any wife or children in either life?
No.
Is that true of you, number three, too, as well?
No, I didn't.
Well, I suppose you're lucky in a way. Number three, well, you would have had to choose, right? You might have two great families. It's happened. Number three, what is amnesia exactly? Is there any one thing that's amnesia, or is it several things?
Well, it's a loss of memory.
I know that, but I mean, well, number one, is it a physical, in your case, it was set off by a physical injury, but is it a physical thing, or an emotional thing, or a combination?
Yes, I think it is.
Which?
I'm sorry.
You forgot, right?
No, it was like, yes. It was like, well, you have, the way the doctor told me that I had certain parts to my brain, only 1/8 of it was used anyway, and one part of it had short-circuited.
That's it. Time for you now to mark your ballots. Mark them at once before you forget, and without consultation. Without change, too, once you have marked them. Vote for number one, number two, or number three. And our team of challengers will receive $250 for every incorrect vote. Are all ballots marked? Very well. Tom, for whom did you vote?
Well, I voted for number two. He's a big, strong guy that if he told me he didn't remember his name, I'd believe him. So I think it was number two.
Peggy Cass.
Well, that's strange, because I voted for number two, too. You know, he seemed very honest when he answered it, and he was brief and to the point, and I thought it was number two.
Orson Bean.
Whoever he is, he's taking a chance coming here, because this experience can shake you up. You might forget again, you know. One of the other guys might claim to be you. I voted for number two for no reason other than I can't imagine picking him to be a fake for it, if he isn't the real one. Well, I don't know why. I don't have to explain these things. I just give them out, that's all.
Kitty Carlisle.
I voted for number three. I think number three looks very happy. And I would be very happy, too, if I discovered who I was and not have to keep worrying about where my parents were.
All right, there we have it. So the vote's all in and the mind's solidly made up, as you heard. And now let's find out who's right, who's wrong, as we learn which of these three gentlemen, in truth, is Robert Sheridan. Will the real Robert Sheridan please stand up? Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now, number one, what is your real name and what do you really do?
My name is Henry Lee Albright. I'm the resident manager of the American Express Travel Check Division.
Thank you. And number three, what is your real name and what do you do, sir?
My name is Walter Bomar. I'm a commercial artist.
Well, we checked the score to find that there was one incorrect vote, and that's worth $250. Gentlemen, we thank you very much for telling us this story and hope you enjoyed your visit to us as much as we enjoyed having you here. Good night, and God bless you. Let's meet our next team of challengers.
What is your name, please?
My name is Nikki de St.
My name is Nikki de St.
My name is Nikki de St.
Follow along with your copies of this one, if you will, please. Panel. I, Nikki de St. am a sculptor and painter. My work has been shown in various museums, both here and abroad. I started painting a little over 10 years ago and worked in oil and collage. I soon became bored with these conventional techniques and began creating paintings with the help of a rather unusual tool, a .22 caliber rifle. Placing such homespun objects as tomatoes, eggs, and spaghetti under a piece of plaster, I would shoot away to see what oozed out. Recently, I began sculpturing large statues made of chicken wire, bamboo, and scraps of cloth. I just had an exhibition of these figures at an internationally known gallery. The ones on your screen now are my latest creations and represent a woman dancing and a woman standing on her head. I call these figures nanas, which translated from French slang means simply dames. Signed, Nikki de St. So, panel, these three young ladies all claim to be, as you heard, Nikki de St. We'll start the cross-examination, if we may, with Orson Bean. Orson?
Thank you. Number 3, if you made paintings or whatever they were with tomatoes and eggs and things, wouldn't your paintings spoil?
Well, that wasn't really the problem at the moment.
No, it could be if you had it around the house for 6 months. If I had an egg once, I could tell you it was at Easter time, friends. Tell me about that, number 3.
Well, the problem was trying to make something that was beautiful, and I wasn't really concerned with whether or not
it lasted.
Whether or not it was going to last.
All right, well, that's a good attitude. Number 1, up at the Jewish Museum in New York City right now, there's an exhibition of some crazy kind of sculpture. Do you know whose it is?
Jean Tingley.
All right. Number 2, there's a kind of a Mexican look to some of your things. Are you influenced by that at all?
No, I actually ignore every other artist. I mean, I just want to be myself.
Well, that's not bad, dear.
Kitty Carlisle.
Number 2, is your family connected with a brokerage house in France? Number 2?
No, not at all.
Is yours number 3?
Yes, mine is.
Thank you. Number 1, what do you spray the chicken wire and the bamboo with to make it firm like that?
Oh, it's sprayed with glue, a liquid glue.
How do you, number two, how do you get it on?
I first of all, I make the glue myself, and then I just splash it with gun or with...
Number 3, what caused you to do this kind of surrealist thing with a rifle? Why did you use a rifle to see what oozed out?
Well, first of all, I don't think it was a surrealist gesture. It was just my own personal way.
Thank you.
Tom Poston.
Thank you. Number 1, what is the device that's used on that figure standing on her head? What is that, the pattern that you have devised there for her?
Oh, it's not a standard pattern. It's just my own imagination as the mood took me, as I felt the figure deserved.
Well, I should say it certainly is colorful. I wish I could see these things in color. They're simply lovely. Number 2, what is that stuff that seems to sparkle on her?
Actually, it's just the glue. It's the concoction that I make with the glue that has a shining quality once it dries out.
Oh, I see. Number 3, if I may again, when you shot these, how did you have the fruits and eggs and things back of the plaster? What was the plaster in the first place? I didn't get a clear picture of it on the monitor here, so...
Well, that wasn't one which was made. That one had no eggs or tomatoes in it.
Yes, I wondered about that.
Peggy Cass.
Thank you. Number 1, what is your New York gallery?
The Iolus Gallery.
Thank you. Number 3, by the way, I'm just crazy about these. I think they're great.
Yeah.
But number 3, wouldn't they melt if you put them outdoors?
Well, these are not for outdoors. I'm working on a new technique for outdoors, but these are indoor sculptures.
Thank you. Number 1, those are so colorful, but there's a sculptor named Jorge Shallow who does sculptures. Could you tell me what color his people are?
I'm not familiar with his work at all.
Thank you. And number 2, who is Marisol?
I think, I know the name. I think that she is an American pop art artist.
Thank you. Number 3...
That's it. Time for you to mark your ballots. So mark them, if you will, please, at once, without change, without any consultation. Vote now for number 1, number 2, or number 3. Ballots all marked. Very well. Tom, for whom did you vote?
I made such a tentative 3, you can hardly see that it's a 3 at all, but it's meant to be. I thought that the way she answered the question when she said, listen, that had nothing to do with that tomatoes or tomatoes, as she said, and eggs and so forth. That was a whole other thing, so I thought it was number 3.
Peggy.
Oh, I voted for number 3. I'm just positive it's number 3.
Tom Poston.
I voted for number 3.
I mean...
Oh, I'm sorry.
For 20 years, I've been trying to figure out how I am.
Your name.
And now you've thrown me off
Orson
again.
Bean.
I made this, too, by sprinkling caraway seeds on a base of Swiss chard here. Well, I voted for number 2. I figured it was number 1 because the Tingley exhibit is up at the Jewish Museum. It's supposed to be marvelous. But then she didn't know who George Siegel was, and I think she would. And number 2 knew who Marisol was. But Tom Poston and Peggy must know something because they're sure it's 3.
Kitty.
I voted for number 3. I didn't ask number 1 about the brokerage house, which is this kind of banking thing, but we dealt with them in Paris, so I had to vote for number 3. And I think she's the kind of girl, she looks like the kind of girl who would do those marvelous statues.
Great.
So there we have it. With 3 for number 3 and 1 for number 2, we'll find out now which one of these young ladies, in truth, is Nikki de St. Will the real Nikki de St. please stand up? Your wise ones tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you. You may be seated, if you will. Number 1, what is your real name and what do you really do?
My name is Pamela Sinclair, and I'm executive assistant of the Federation of French Alliances.
And number 2, what is your real name and what do you do?
My name is Marika Lawrence, and I spin records at a discotheque in New York, Il Mio.
Well, we thank you all. In checking the score, we find that the panel was smart for the second time tonight, nearly whopping it out the wrong way here. But there was still 1 incorrect vote, and that's still worth $250. And we thank you very much for being with us. Good night. God bless you. And our third team of challengers.
What is your name, please?
My name is George Schaller.
My name is George Shallow.
My name is George Schaller.
You have copies of this one? Follow along, if you will, please, panel. I, George Schaller, am a zoologist. I spent 2 years studying the mountain gorilla in its native habitat, Africa. The mountain gorilla lives in the rainforests of east and central portions of the dark continent in the high-altitude area where Rwanda, Uganda, and the Congo meet. Armed with nothing more lethal than a notebook, I tabulated and recorded with sketches and photographs every aspect of gorilla life from birth to death, 24 hours a day. In general, gorillas lead a placid life, and their famous habit of chest thumping is not a sign of rage, but merely part of a ritual to relieve tension. On several occasions, I bedded down less than 100 feet from a gorilla family. Gorillas do not snore, rise soon after sunup, and can spend up to 3 hours eating breakfast. Gorillas are curious. As I studied them, they studied me, often climbing a tree to get a better look at what I was doing. Mine is the most complete study ever made of the gorilla, one of man's closest living relatives. Signed, George Schaller. Panel, these 3 gentlemen all claim to be George Schaller. As you heard, we'll start with monkey lover Peggy Cass.
Thank you. And number 3, since you observed them from birth to death, could you tell me, do gorillas have twins?
No,
They always have just one birth.
single birth.
Thank you. Number 1, are gorillas monogamous?
No.
Heavens. Well, number 2, how long does a gorilla stick around with the true girl, with his one girl? Just every season?
They go from one to the other. There's no set time.
Well, certainly ruined my faith in gorillas. Number 3, what do they have for breakfast that takes them 3 hours to eat?
They eat a variety of vegetation, the pith out of bamboo, nettles, the karawaja, the hagenia leaves, and so on.
They're vegetarians, in other words.
They are vegetarians.
Thank you.
Orson Bean.
Number 3, does the Karawaja grow in Uganda and Rwanda?
Certain areas.
Number 3, how can you eat nettles? Don't you get all them sticky things in your lips there?
No, they're immune to the sting.
Oh, they don't mind. That's sweet. Number 1, I saw King Kong the other night, and what he did to Fay Ray, I don't want to go into the details. It's a family show. Now, for years, I grew up seeing gorillas carry off blondes into the jungle. It ain't true, right?
That's
I
right.
mean, pictures of it. right?
It's false. They don't carry
They don't
off
like
women.
bonds. At all, right?
Right.
Now, why do the native people of Africa, I'll ask this at number 2, don't the native people of Africa think that a gorilla is really a person?
No. The natives are frightened of the gorillas.
Yeah. How about orangutangs? Or they call them wild men, right? Of Borneo.
Kitty Carlisle.
Number 1, how do you know they thumped their chests to relieve tension? What did you see them do that led you to believe they were tense?
In general, when they're put into a tense situation, at least something one would judge it's tense, they beat their chests.
Thank you. Number 2, a very famous book has been written recently about monkeys and gorillas and their sense of property. Do you know who wrote this book?
Their sense of property? No, I don't.
Number 3, is it true that gorillas have a very strong sense of property? If they stake out a claim in a tree, that's for their family and no one else?
No.
It's not true?
No.
Do you agree with that, number 1?
That's true. They do not stake out a claim.
They don't.
Tom Poston.
Thank you, Bud. Number 1, do gorillas use tools of any kind?
It has never been reliably reported.
No. But number 2, let me ask you, are you familiar with that story for the readers, for the National Geographic about the great apes?
There was, you mean the chimpanzee story of Jane Goodall?
Yes. Well, do you know where that took place, number 2? Do you know where that study took place?
Yes, in the rainforests of the Congo.
Well, I guess so. I don't know myself. Number 3, are gorillas, how much do gorillas weigh at full growth?
At maturity, they weigh between, the males weigh between 200 and 350 pounds. The females weigh slightly less.
That's it. Time for you now to mark your ballots. So come down out of the trees and mark them. Mark them at once without any consultation with each other. And, of course, no changing your ballot once you have marked it. Vote now for number 1, number 2, or number 3. Ballots all marked. Tom, for whom did you vote this time?
Well, I voted for number 1. I don't care if he's the right one or not. I never saw anybody lie more convincingly than he did if he's a liar. So I voted for him. I think that the guy that made this study must be a compassionate human being with dedication and so forth, and I thought he displayed a great deal of that, so I voted for him.
Peggy.
You know, I almost voted for 2 because of the Congo rainforest and the name of that girl, but you know, 3 knew all about those funny weeds and about they don't mind getting the nettles. They use them later as toothpicks and stuff like that, so. What?
There was 3 who knew they didn't mind the
That's right,
nettles.
but that's who I voted for, 3.
Couldn't prove it by me. It looks like a gorilla made that.
It did.
I voted for number 1. That's a hairy one out there because I don't know. They're all very good. They all knew a tremendous amount. The 2 liars over there have worked very hard, but I just have a hunch. I used to go and stare at Gargantua for years in the circus and just sit around. Just an old man's ramblings, Francis.
Kitty.
I voted for number 2. I'm surprised they didn't know Robert Ardrey's book, but they were all terribly scientific. But I think it's really number 2.
Well, this is the widest split-up you've had tonight, with 2 for number 1, 1 for number 2, and 1 for number 3. Let's find out now which one of these gentlemen, in truth, is George Schaller. Will the real George Schaller please stand up?
Oh!
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Hey, Bud.
Yes.
Just as a point of, I think gorillas weigh closer to 600 pounds than 300, don't they, full-grown?
Full-grown male in captivity weighs up to 600, but they don't get as fat in the wild. In the wild, they weigh up to about 400.
Ah, that easy living in civilization, huh? Incidentally, Dr. George Schaller has written a book about his study of the gorillas. It's called The Year of the Gorilla, published by the University of Chicago Press. We wish you well with it, sir.
Thank you.
Number 2, what is your real name and what do you really do?
My name is Larry Swanson. I'm a commercial photographer.
Thank you, sir. And number 3, what is your real name and what do you do?
My name is Kenneth Stennis, and I'm a theatrical producer.
Checking the score, we find you did the best so far tonight. There were 2 incorrect votes. That's twice $250. Total, therefore, $500. And we thank you very much for brightening this evening for us. Good night, and God bless you. microphone for tonight, but you, panel, are constantly my greatest pleasure, and I thank you. See you next week. See you next week, too. Of course, see you tomorrow on the afternoon, the daytime show. But in the meantime, don't you forget to tell the truth. Good night.
To Tell the Truth is a Mark Goodson, Bill Trotman production.
Stay tuned for more laughter as actor-singer George Maharis tries to stump Steve Allen's panel on I've Got a Secret.
To Tell the Truth has been brought to you by Infrarub to relieve nagging minor pain of arthritis, rheumatism, muscular aches for hours. Johnny Olson speaking. For To Tell the Truth, the program was pre-recorded.